My name is Jonathan Gillum.
And this is The Experts.
This is Jonathan Gillum, and this is The Experts on Facebook Live, Twitter, and YouTube. And I am here with my first studio audience. They're all around me. There's like literally, I'm looking at like 1,000 people behind the camera right now. You cannot believe how many people are here. All super fans of the CQRF. Okay, maybe not 1,000, but there's at least 10. We're gonna get these numbers up before the week is over. But I will tell you this: I have some great guests. I just told people throughout the day. I said, "Hey, this is what we're doing. Feel free to show up. And if you're seeing a little bit of a pause in what I'm saying and what's being broadcast, you're getting to hear it. That's the most important part of it. I'm nothing to look at. So." But we will have people here, and hopefully by tomorrow I'll have the issues of the lagging resolved. But we're going to start off today, and I asked several different people to come by here. Some of them can't stay that long, but there's different charities, different things that people are doing, some team guys that will come by and talk about all the things that they're involved with. So why don't we go ahead and start it with the warning order. Let's do it. So joining me again, you can see yourself there on the computer, is Heidi Hansing. And here, scoot over that way just a little bit, Heidi. I can make that sign smaller next time too. So Heidi, I wanted you to come up here. We didn't get a chance really to talk about this yesterday, but I want to talk about the wheelchair program that you're involved with. And let me see that real quick.
Go ahead.
It's called Rolling Strong, I guess, right?
Well, Wheelchairs for Warriors. That's our tagline.
Oh, Wheelchairs for Warriors. Okay. And that would be this right here. Okay. There you go. How do people find out about that, first of all?
Okay, first of all, let's get the URL out there. It's wheelchairsforwarriors.com.
Yep.
Spell out the word 4, not the number 4. And we are a 501c3 nonprofit that provides enhanced mobility solutions for wounded warriors and law enforcement officers.
Right.
And those that are injured in the line of duty these are men of action, men and women of action. They find that their world gets very restricted as they become confined to a wheelchair. And a lot of them, especially for our veterans who are getting substandard equipment from the VA, we found that there is a huge gap in their quality of their life compared when you look at what they're issued from the VA and what they really need in order to pick up a lot of the activities that they would like to be involved in even before their injuries. You know, going to their children's baseball games or to the theater for their children's plays,
yeah,
or around their community to community events. Even something like that becomes very daunting when they have substandard equipment that's really heavy. Their spouse has to try and fold it up, sling it into the back of the minivan. And so they find that their world becomes very small because their mobility is restricted. And we want to change that because many of them have been waiting for months and sometimes even years for enhanced mobility solutions. And that's where we come in. We take private donations. All of them go into the wheelchairs, and we want to change lives and give back to those who've already sacrificed so much.
So don't, as I'm saying this stuff and I'm looking around, don't be disturbed by me because I'm hearing every single word you're saying. So I just have to run this stuff at the same time. So how did you get started in this, and how did they start? Because here's the thing I'm finding with a lot of these nonprofits is that, well, first of all, there's a lot of them. Right. Yes. And sometimes I'm finding that people who start these nonprofits start them from an angle of when you start a nonprofit, you can make a lot of money and you can pay yourself a fee. So I'm very interested in the beginnings of these and the founders of these. I mean, I'm sure you've seen this. I've actually dealt with one where Everybody, even a lot of SEALs were involved with it because they thought that they were actually doing a great job. They had great swag. As it turned out, they were keeping all the money.
Okay. So that's the cautionary tale
Yeah.
that you're talking about. I think those of us in the veteran community are all very familiar with the cautionary tale of that certain organization where very few of the funds were actually getting to the veterans.
Right.
And it was frustrating for veterans who were applying for help and were applying for efforts and you know, basically things to be kind of pushed in their direction, and it wasn't happening.
Right.
So the co-founder of Wheelchairs for Warriors and I have both volunteered on our own time and our own dime for years for nonprofits, and we saw this up close and in person. We saw this in a lot of different charitable organizations where a lot of the time that we spent raising funds and money, and then very little of it actually got back to the veterans. That's why we decided, hey, we're going to do this our way, we're going to do it the right way, and we're going to put the money that people donate specifically into the chairs. If we want to do anything else, if we are going to put on an event, or if we are going to bring in a speaker, we get that privately funded outside of the efforts for raising money for wheelchairs. Right. Sometimes it's us, sometimes we fund it ourselves, or sometimes it's someone who believes in what we're doing and they want to assist in that manner, but everybody knows exactly what their funds are going for. When we raise funds for wheelchairs, 100% of them go to wheelchairs.
Okay, so now what I want you to do now, just to show the credibility of the person behind it that's speaking behind it, the show's called The Experts. So I want, if you don't mind, tell a little bit about your resume, about your background, and I think people are going to realize the level of person that is here at SHOT Show. A lot of these people that show up here, like yourself, have these incredible resumes, and when you're speaking, when you're backing something like this, it's a big deal.
Well, I think probably one of the titles that I'm most proud of is I'm a Blue Star mom. I have a son who is an officer in the U.S. Army. He's on active duty now, so that is something I'm very proud of. I'm a veteran myself, a former Army officer myself. Probably more proud of my son than I am maybe even of my own service, but that has, because of that, there's an accountability there because of the veteran community that I'm a part of, that I want to stay a respected part of, and because my own son is still in service, and I pray to God he never needs to use a charity like ours, but I want to reach out to those who unfortunately have, and I want to treat them like I would want my own son treated. So that right there, those are probably the two foremost things, but my background for a long time has been in veteran advocacy and legislation and in public service. Right. I was an elected official in the state of Texas for a while.
See, so that's what I'm talking about. That's how I know that somebody has real quals, because you're like, it's no big deal. You know, I was a veteran, my son's a veteran, I held public office. I mean, you're not somebody like Richard Fowler or Meghan McCain, who literally have never done anything but have an opinion about the Syria war and what's best for our healthcare. You know, I'm not really interested in anything that they have to say. I'm interested in hearing from experts who've actually, like yourself, worked in legislation. Yes. People tune into TV every day and they listen to people talk about how President Trump should legislate this or that, and they've never even held an office in Cub Scouts, let alone, you know, an office in Texas.
They've never even watched the little How a Bill Becomes a Law.
Oh, yeah.
Remember the little musical,
on
How a Bill
Capitol
Becomes
Hill.
a Law?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, and I also want to mention our executive director, because her qualifications are pretty stellar as well. She worked for the State Department and was deployed to Baghdad, right, and for a number of years, and so she is definitely someone, having served in diplomacy, in the Middle East, she's someone who, for her, this is also a mission that comes straight from the heart. Because she served with those guys. Right, she served with them, usually Marines. Yeah. And so it's something that's very close to her heart as well. And then also we have a wheelchair engineer on staff. And for him, it's a ministry too, because his own father was in a wheelchair and suffered a lot of the setbacks and the restrictions that we want to solve. Those are the problems we want to solve.
Right. And how do people, again, how do how do people get in touch with this particular charity?
Well, I really invite you to go to our website first, especially if you know anyone who needs an enhanced mobility solution. That website is wheelchairsforwarriors.com, all one word, all smashed together. I know it's long. Have some patience, you'll get there. There is an application there if you or someone you know and love is in need of a wheelchair. We also have a Join the Mission, and we have our inaugural fundraiser kickoff on May 21st, and that has been rescheduled from 9/11. Our hometown is League City, Texas, just south of Houston. We're halfway between Houston and Galveston, and our area was devastated by Harvey right around the time that we were going to have our inaugural fundraiser kickoff on 9/11.
Wow.
So we rescheduled it, and we're regrouping now because our area has been pretty devastated by that. There was no way we wanted to be able to tap those, you can't tap those
Right.
people for venues, for donations. So we really are reaching outside of our geographical area and nationwide. In fact, our executive director and our wheelchair engineer just got back from Boston, and they were fitting Garrett Fitzgerald, who is a Secret Service agent injured in the line of duty, and his young bride. They got married after his injury.
Wow.
And we're going to hopefully change their lives. That's the whole point.
Awesome.
Change their lives for the better. That's the whole point.
So, Heidi Hansing, am I saying Hansing? That's right. I'm saying.
Yes.
Okay. I can't thank you enough for all the service that you've done for our country and for Texas. And I'm going to have you back on next week or the week after when I get back to New York, and I'll have you via Skype.
All right.
And
we get into the
and we'll get into the nitty-gritty about the Constitution, about states' rights, and about the reality of what's happening in the federal government.
Outstanding. You get me on a soapbox about states' rights, and you might not have to.
It'll be a 3-hour show.
Woo! I can go live for 3 hours on states' rights.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the time, and
You got
thank
it.
you all for your interest. I appreciate it.
All right, I'll see you here in a little bit.
All righty.
All right, we're gonna switch gears a little bit. You all, can you stay for just a minute? Okay, hold on there. I'm gonna have you come over here, and all right, I'll see you later. And let's go to the A block. And we didn't really do a warning order, but we're gonna do go to the A block now, and we're gonna talk about a product that a friend of mine that I just met today, but a former team guy, a brother of mine, has produced. So let's go to the A block. So you can see all those fancy graphics that I did there.
No doubt.
So Mark, tell me your last name again.
Hoteling, like a hotel with an ing.
Hoteling.
Yep.
So Mark and I were just drinking beer a minute ago over with the rest of the SEALs, and forget coffee, I guess it's beer over here at SHOT Show. So it was like a reunion of SEALs, and we got to lean back because I got to keep making this thing smaller and smaller, I guess. Or I'll just do this. Watch it. Watch the magic of this this whole thing right here. Let's see here. We're just going to pull this right down there. And right there. Okay. Now tell us about your product and exactly what you do and what it was like when you left the teams. You can give me your resume, and then what it was like when you left the teams and went into the civilian world.
We live?
What's that?
Are we live?
Yeah, we're live. We're live.
All right. So, Dan, you and I talked earlier. I was a bit of an oddball in the team, so I was a born-again Christian and still am. And
same here.
So I came out I came out of the teams to do full-time ministry.
Wow.
I pastor a church now, but since then, in coming out, I couldn't escape my background. Everybody said, "Hey, will you teach me how to shoot? Hey, how do I,
how
clear
do
my
I kill
house?
somebody?
How do I, all that." And so I started a training company, and never had any intention of making any money off of it. It was just a hobby company that I wanted to, equip my family and friends and how to defend themselves. And I was actually paying the bills by working in politics, conservative politics, pro-family, pro-life politics. And so I did that for a number of years as I was building the company. And then I pastored a church, still pastoring a church. But this company over the last 10 years has now become, something that I never dreamed of. And 46 employees, and we're training not just law-abiding citizens, but military, law enforcement, and across the country. And so here we are.
Wow. See, and I didn't even get into that when we had talked down there before, but that is pretty phenomenal. And When you were in the teams, I talk a lot about my faith in Jesus and my walk that I've had. One of the reasons why I went into SEAL training was because I was studying psychology and political science in college. But before that, I was studying, now don't laugh, philosophy and world religions, and that's what I was going to major in. I realized that's not going to get me anywhere in life as far as money goes. So psychology and political science really didn't either. But I was reading the story of Job, and Job had everything taken away from him, and his faith was tested, and God had faith in him that he could be tested.
Sure.
And I felt as though I was called to serve in the SEAL teams for not just that reason, but that was a big reason. And nothing will test you in your faith and in your faith in yourself like buds, ever.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's interesting you bring up Job, because the whole essence of the book of Job is the sovereignty of God.
Right.
Is God in control? Right? Is he really the creator of the universe? Is he really the master of all? Even though we can't see the forest from the trees, right, at a given time, is God really in control? And that's the lesson of the book of Job. And I think you and I both know that every man who goes to Buds has something to prove to somebody.
Right.
Every man who graduates Buds has nothing to prove to any man ever again.
Yeah.
And there's a liberation.
But none of us feel that way.
Well, but there's a liberation there, right?
Yeah.
And we're all walking out this thing called life, and it does come down to faith.
Yeah.
And do we have faith? And a lot of people have faith in a lot of different things, But I served with lots of guys that I was willing to die for, and they were willing to die for me.
Yeah.
Still to this day. I mean, we have the little reunion downstairs, right? And all of a sudden, all these guys get together, and there's a brotherhood that no one could ever break.
Right.
A man who has faith, a woman who has faith, that can never be broken, because God is sovereign.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree with you, and it transcends into a business model as well, and the way that you treat people, the way that when you have employees. One thing I always liked about God was the way he recruited people like David, who had the right spirit, asked the right questions, and then the way he would mold people, and then the way he cut away people when they didn't do what was requested of them. And running a business is exactly the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the company is called Makaira Group, and for those of those folks who, like me, are not experts in Greek, if you just look at Ephesians chapter 6, and you'll see the full armor of God listed there, right? And there's all these great weapons. They're all defensive weapons, except for the last weapon. The last weapon in that list is the sword of the Spirit. That word sword in Greek is Makaira, and that's why I named the company Makaira Group. And from day one, look, we're here to serve. We're here to serve people, law-abiding citizens, right? I love what you do when it comes to states' rights, to Constitution, to liberty, and all that, because that's who we are as Americans.
Right.
And you and I have been around I like to say we've been around the world twice and every Walmart once, right? We've seen it. We've met a lot of different people, right? Nobody on this planet understands conservatism, constitutionality, freedom, liberty like Americans do.
Right. Now, you asked me a question. I did a little video blurb a little while ago for Mark and for your company. I want to ask you the same question you asked me, except not about the FBI. But what about this country? Do you think that, when we're in the teams, we relied on each other. It was funny because, you try to get guys to build a pallet and they'll end up getting in a fist fight. But you tell them to go into war and face this terrible enemy, and they will work in such a fluid fashion that things just work. What has the American citizenry lost since George Washington that is of utmost importance that we get back as the citizenry?
Yeah. I think at the core is it's not about me. It's not about me. It's actually about somebody else.
Right.
And Scripture is very clear, right? We're to esteem others higher than ourselves. And we've struggled culturally. We've struggled in society. Certainly the last administration was everything about me. Right? It was not about serving our fellow man. When we look at the people who, the greatest generation who, went to World War II, when we look at the volunteers who signed up like you and I did, right, for we didn't know it, right? But 9/11, Afghanistan, Iraq, and all that, there's a certain part of the culture that wants to serve, protect, help, and care for others, and there's a certain part of the culture that doesn't. And I hope, my prayers are that that we can just walk forward doing the right thing, and we will change culture by our words and our actions, our words and deeds.
Do you think the Founding Fathers should have made it mandatory for everybody to serve like in Israel?
I don't. I really don't. And I don't know what your position is on this.
Well, I think it's a catch-22. I think when you
Sure.
conscript people,
Yep.
You're not going to get a lot of service out of them. But on the other hand, if you have to go through boot camp, it does build a sense of understanding of what freedom's about.
Sure.
So it's a catch-22.
It is, and I see that, and certainly with Israel, that's a very small, contained.
8 million people.
Yeah, a very small group of people. They can do something more on a team level, a micro level, right? But I don't know about you, Dan. I don't know
Jonathan.
or Jonathan. Sorry. So you know why I called you Dan?
What is that?
Because I had a guy that I served with in the teams that is named Dan with the same last name. Anyway. You and I both saw, and people served us in a support role,
right,
that were there as volunteers. And they did their job, and they did their job well because they were passionate and their heart was
right.
in on that job. And so I just think, now being in ministry and dealing with folks that served in the Vietnam conflict that were forced to go there, I don't think so. I'd rather have an all-volunteer, passionate, heartful force, right? That's there. They love their country. They love their countrymen,
yeah.
right? And they want to do the job. There's a passion there.
One last question.
Yeah.
We have, I don't know, we got, I would say, if we were looking at the real numbers between Facebook, Twitter, and all these other, we probably have several hundred people. By the time this is over with, we'll have thousands of people have watched this show.
Sure.
For all the Christians that are out there watching, what do you say to them when they wake up and they're starting to lose faith in the government? I'm not going to say the leadership, but the effectiveness of the government, the states' rights. What do you say to Christians when they're starting to lose hope?
Remember your brothers and sisters, right? When we look at the book of Hebrews, we look at this hall of faith, right? All those who have gone before us. There's nothing new under the sun, right? There's going to be persecution. There's going to be hard times. But the big picture, I go back to the sovereignty of God. It's all about the sovereignty of God. Is God in control of your life? If he was in enough control to save you from hell, if he was in enough control to pluck you from darkness and to put you into light, he's still just as much in control of your daily life every day, and he oversees the government. And we can't understand this because we look at the horizon and we see a hill. We don't know what's up over the other side of the hill.
Right.
But God does, because he created it all.
Yeah.
And so the faith comes down to trust. A man, real quick, and I'll finish with this. A man went to Jesus and said he had a son that was possessed by a demon, right? The demon would throw him into the fire, into the water, trying to kill him.
Right.
Right? And Jesus looked at him and said, "Do you believe?" And the man's response is very important here. He said, "Yes, I believe, but help me with my unbelief." And if you look at the original Greek, those are two very different words. What the man was saying is, yes, I believe that you're the Christ, that you're the Messiah, but help me in trusting you.
Right.
That's what it comes down to. Do we trust God that he is sovereign?
So I'm going to tell you this, and I'll save a little bit of this for the Truth Zone at the end, but this is how similar team guys are. So my dog, everybody knows how much my dogs mean to me. My baby girl dog, she died at 12, almost 13 years old in 2014. Probably one of the biggest crushing blows of my life. Yeah. And my dog Rico, now who's at home being watched by his auntie Maureen, who's doing a fantastic job, by the way, taking care of Rico. He's almost 18 years old. When he was 4, he got diagnosed with a thing called thrombocytopenia, which is a blood disease. And he got overdosed by the vet of medication, which caused his whole system to collapse. At one point, he had, their blood's the same as ours, and he had 3% red blood cells. Usually it's 36%. He had no measurable blood platelets, which meant he was constantly bleeding internally, and his white blood cells were out of control. And so they were trying to give him blood transfusions. They'd given him like 4 blood transfusions. And I went home and I was reading the Bible, and that's the verse that came up. And I got down on my hands and knees that night and I prayed, Lord, a very simple prayer. It wasn't elaborate. I didn't pray out loud. I got on my hands and knees. I said, Lord, I believe. Help me with my unbelief. Mm-hmm. Within 24 hours, that dog was not just better, he was home. Mm-hmm. and was basically cured. Mm-hmm. Had a few little hiccups over the past 14 years since then, but is still going strong. Mm-hmm. And that verse has always been a mainstay in my life. Mm-hmm. So
God performs miracles every day. God answers every prayer. Sometimes he answers it yes. Yeah. Sometimes he answers it no.
Right.
But who are we to question the creator of the universe, the God that spoke all of this into existence, the God that knitted you together in your mother's womb before anybody even knew that you were a child?
Right.
Right. Who are we to question his choice?
Right.
As soon as we start to say, no, God, you should have done it this way, or you should have done it that way, guess who becomes God at that point?
Right.
I do.
Yeah, and I'm not very good at being God.
I put myself on the throne instead of putting the living Messiah, the Christ, on the throne and letting him rule and reign just like he always has. And we all go through. I'm not trying to be oh, that's what the pastor should say, right? No, this is real life. But God didn't just wind us up and spit us out and say, okay, sucks to be you and good luck to you, right? He is sovereign. He is in control. We may not have the answer until we get home. Yeah. But he's still in control every single moment.
Right.
And he shows himself. He showed himself to you. He showed evidence. Yes, I am the sovereign God of the universe. Just by that one time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, brother. It's very nice meeting you.
You too, brother.
Thank you very much. How do people find you on social media?
Facebook at makairagroup.com. It's spelled MAKHAIRA group. And our website is .com. If you forget all that, just go to citizentraining.com and you'll find us. And if anybody out there is looking to be a servant leader in teaching, instruction, range safety officer, electronic security, anything like that, please get a hold of us because we'd love to have you a part of the team.
Got it. Hey, God bless you and God bless your company, and I hope to see you again this week. And if not, I'll see you next year.
Okay, sounds good, brother.
Thank you very much.
God bless
you. Got it. All right, folks, there you go. There's the camera over there. So I'm going to keep this moving. Man, typically this would be like the whole show. We would just do this interview right here. I'm going to keep moving here real quick, and I'm going to bring in another a friend of the show, and we're going to talk about another nonprofit. And then once we get through with all these interviews, I'll have time to talk to you about what's going on in the news. Let's go to the B block. You don't want to come in here? Okay. So now I'm with Maggie It's Duskin, right?
Duskin.
So Maggie, so you watch this show?
No, I don't.
But you know the book. You're a fan of the book. You had the book. Okay. So now she's a fan of the show. But let me tell you, just step in here for a second. So yesterday I'm coming down the escalator, and Eric, I'm sorry, Mark just left. Eric walks up to me and says, I've been reading your book on the plane. And I autographed it for him today. But it's good to see that book is out, and it's and people are. What made you get that book, by the way?
I'm going to make my kids read it.
But how did you find it?
I heard when you were subbing for someone, you said about I pre-ordered one.
Yeah.
So that's where I heard that. I was like, looks like a good book, and you're talking about it. So
awesome.
Situational awareness type of thing.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay, we'll give the mic back to you. Get out of here. Okay. All right. And those of you who don't know, the book is Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival. I don't have any of them here with me, but I got a whole box of them back at the room. So, here. I got Eric's / Mark, whatever we call him. Okay, there you go. So there you go. And you can order that on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. It's also in all the stores. Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival. So, Maggie, tell me about your nonprofit.
We're the Duskin and Stevens Foundation. We're a 501c.
Yep.
We support the special operations families.
Yep.
We work primarily with Gold Star families, and what our main event is the beef and beer. It is.
I like it.
Yeah, it starts on Thursday, Memorial Day weekend, and runs through Saturday. It's 3 days of nonstop fun, and it started out exactly what it sounds like. Basically a barbecue. Everybody donated something. And in the middle of, during the event, we have a silent auction. And that's basically how we run our nonprofit through the year, is the proceeds from that. And then on the other side, you also see a raffle that we do during the rest of the part of the year. We raffle off a gun or a rifle. And but all of our proceeds primarily go to scholarships to put kids K through 12 into private schools in the SOF community. And because, you know, the schools around military bases aren't always that good.
Right.
So, and we're building future leaders. And the really cool thing about our nonprofit is it is strictly run by volunteers and active duty or former active duty. So,
wow.
Yeah. So it's really cool. There's all 10 of us.
And how did you all get started in this? What was it what was it that got you started in this?
My husband was killed in September 2012. His teammate was killed a month before. During that time, we had all the funerals and everything. I'm sorry.
That's all right. And what branch were they in?
Army Special Forces. They were both Green Berets.
Okay.
The guys were all gone. So when they came back, they said, we want to hold a beef and beer to memorialize their lives, not...
See, that's soft right there. That's the way we think. Let's honor the guys with beef and beer. And yeah, that's the way it goes.
So
and this is their names right here?
Yep, Mike Duskin and Riley Stevens. My husband was a warrant officer on his 7th deployment. I believe Riley was on his 7th, 8th also. And they both came from sister teams, same battalion and everything.
Right.
So we started out, like I said, as a barbecue in the backyard. And now we're on our 6th year, and we have over probably close to 2,000 people that attend every year.
And where is it? This going to be this week?
It's at Memorial Day weekend.
Memorial Day. I'm sorry.
It's
my brain's all over the place. But I thought there was something happening here, but that's not you guys. That's somebody else.
No, we're not.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to thanking sponsors.
Yeah.
What's that?
That sponsors, we're thanking them here as
well.
Oh,
gotcha. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Previous sponsors we're thanking and trying to drum up new sponsors, but it's Memorial Day weekend. And we do the beef and beer. Then we have a private or exclusive shooting range event on Friday. And on Saturday, we close it up with a golf tournament.
And where is that?
Southern Pines, right outside of Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
Okay. I am going to come to this one this year.
You are more than welcome. I'd love to have you. It is awesome. It is so much fun. It is, even though it says beef and beer, it is a family-friendly event.
Okay.
And we can't specify that enough. We have bouncy houses. We had a guy show up one year that heard about us on NPR or something and drove down, threw his llamas in the back of his truck, drove down and gave llama rides.
I'm not going to bring llamas, but I'll bring a microphone.
That's awesome.
And so here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to have you. I'm going to stay in touch with you. I get your information.
Awesome.
And I'm going to be. I may be actually hosting for David Webb on Monday, but I host on these other Sirius shows a lot. So I'd love to have you back or have you on one of those shows with a bigger audience. And then maybe when we do Sean Hannity's show sometime before Memorial Day, we'll do it. And then if you have anything that you want to point out about any of this stuff, don't hesitate to always reach out, and we'll put you on this show or anything at all.
We appreciate it. We love all, everything that, basically everything that we do supports the families, and it goes right back into the community.
Right.
So, and it started out as an event to bring the general public together with, because a lot of people don't realize they're living right next door to a Green Beret.
Right.
Because,
they're a little bit more quiet than SEALs.
Yeah, we're the quiet professionals, but...
I gave that one to you.
You did. But I also have 2 sons in the military also.
Okay.
So
what are they going to do, or what are they doing?
My youngest son is an Army Ranger down at Hunter Army Airfield.
Oh, boy.
And my oldest son currently just re-enlisted, so we're waiting to find out where he's going.
Okay. All right. Rangers lead the way.
Or break shit.
All right, listen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You got it.
Give those out a lot.
Awesome.
Yeah.
These are awesome.
Thank you.
So, and here's, that's...
I don't know if that'll stay on, but that's pretty cool.
Here's our marketing director, but I'll bring you one of our cards tomorrow.
Okay, you got it. Listen, thank you very much, Maggie Duskin, and it's the Duskin and Stevens Foundation. Maggie Duskin, and how do they find it? Say it one more time.
DuskinandStevens.org.
Yeah.
We do have a .com. It'll take you to the .org.
Yeah.
But we also have Facebook and Instagram.
Okay, gotcha. Well, we do this show live every night. It's 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time when you get home, and you're always more than welcome. You got some incredible people that come on here. We have a thing called the CQRF, the Constitutional Quick Reaction Force, and once you're a part of that, these people will stand behind you and
Awesome.
And help share your information. And it's an amazing process that God has blessed us with, this ability to simulcast these shows. So
It's awesome.
you're always more than welcome to be on here. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And God bless the guys. God, thank you, Eric, very much. God bless Mike and Riley. I know that they're sitting up there looking down, very proud of you, and loving this beef and beer. This is the best thing ever.
Here you go. Please come.
Pass them out.
I will, definitely will. Thank you very much.
Thank you, honey.
You got it. All right. All right, we're going to, this is a good show. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. We're going to move on now, and I'm going to bring some guys in that I met last night. And man, I'm telling you what, we had a great time eating prime rib last night, and I just found out the other day that tequila is the only alcohol that's a stimulant, which I may have to have some tequila tonight and something for my voice. I hope I don't lose it. So let's go to the C block. We'll bring these guys in, and then let's find out about what they do. Cops from not just Arizona, but also New Jersey. But everybody here is from you're from Jersey, but is everybody else are cops from where? Or is everybody here cops or no? No, just a couple of you. Okay, military and law enforcement. All right, let's go to the C block, and we're going to bring them in back here behind us. Yes, come on back. All right, so I'm going to tilt this camera up a little bit, and if you guys can squeeze in back there.
We might have to scoot it.
Let's see here.
Can you fit? No, I'm good. I'm totally fit.
I just got to move these logos down. Remember, we're doing this live, as always. That works. All right, so actually I can move that back up a little bit.
Where is everybody? Lance, you need to get on this side.
See if you can move in a little bit. I'll scoot up.
All right. Let's,
All right, for this one, I'm going to pull the mic off. Just don't take it too far. So tell us a little bit about, I got this thing turned way up. Tell us a little bit about the company and what you guys do and how many times you've been to SHOT Show. And this is a big group, and you guys pretty much stay together. Everybody else is kind of splintered that I see with their groups, but you guys seem to be a pretty close-knit group.
We try to stay together as much as we can. Basically, we have a company, Strategic Ops Group, which is formulation of guys from military, law enforcement, corrections, basically every facet of agency training that you could think of is what we do. Okay. So when agencies need a specialized course or something that's above their regular curriculum, then we go to work and plan that out for them and bring in outside instructors, and we have access to a lot of different guys that we work jointly with, and it's something that we've been trying to put together over the last several years. Finally came to culmination in the last couple months, and we've been developing it ever since, and that's just the tip of the iceberg, basically.
It's funny because that's what, how many people have been trying to design that, and they want everybody, it's like when you're a kid and I want to grow up and do this. It's like cops and military all grow up and want to own a Blackwater. You know what I mean? But it seems like you guys are doing this on a smaller level, but nonetheless, you're doing it, and that's the thing that really keeps most people from succeeding is they don't even do it.
Correct. It's all about initiation. As soon as you initialize it, you get going, you build your team, and I've hand-selected everybody in this team and group, and everybody brings their own facet to this, and it makes it a cohesive of things that I don't think are found anywhere else.
And you're the master of the plan. You're the guy that started it.
I'm one of the team members. Yeah. Right. I am the CEO, I guess, as title, but everybody here is equal.
I like that. I like that. So, speaking of equal, everybody from New Jersey thinks that they're better. Well, you're from New York, right? You're from Jersey. You're from Jersey. So everybody from Jersey thinks they're better typically than everybody else. So let's go to a Jersey guy back here. So you might have to lean up a little bit. So what was it like, or when you guys started this company? How difficult is it for a smaller company to compete with these big training companies like what used to be Blackwater? I think they're called Z now or something. They change their name constantly. No, they've been absorbed by somebody else now. But anyway, what was it like for you guys trying to recruit business? Are you the guy to answer that question?
Well, I think we've identified different needs, right? You know, they're on a more of a macro scale, working internationally. We're looking for the localized talent to culminate teams and also provide training to your local law enforcement, your county law enforcement, and even possibly to state law enforcement entities who've identified training gaps that we can fill. So that's where we're kind of aiming our direction and our training teams toward, to go out and get that type of business, because there's a definite gap in the training that they're lacking at this point, in our opinion.
And what about civilians, like civilian groups that get together? Do you guys find that that's something that's on the rise, or no, like prepper groups or people like that? Are they looking for training? Is that not really something that you guys do?
That's actually something that Paul here specializes in Florida.
Oh, Paul, tell us about it. You got to lean over. About the prepper stuff.
Well, we get different people of all types of life that want to learn how to protect themselves in a judicious use of deadly force situation. But I'm the director of law enforcement training for the National Association of Chiefs of Police, and we do a lot of training for law enforcement at our facility for basically little to no cost. And when we're doing training for people that are using judicious use of deadly force criteria and classes, we try to minimize the expense for that as well, because at the end of the day, all we want to do is make sure people never have to go through that kind of situation, and if they do, they're better prepared for it.
Right. You know, when it comes to preparing for stuff, so like it's interesting. I do this radio show every night. I took it on the road for a month, and you use equipment differently when you're on the road. And then when you come back, and I do it again for a year, and then now I'm on the road again, I have to retrain myself. Like, for instance, I was thinking while you were talking about this, typically this is the cord I use at home. It's short because I never move. I don't have audience in there. But when I go on the road, I typically take a long cord with me. But this was so spare of the moment that I got to come here that I just packed what I had on my desk for my nightly show, and I brought it with me. But when you're training civilians and you're training cops, how often do you find that you're really retraining a lot of these people, and then you're adding some new skills here or there? Like, for instance, I need a long cord. I didn't know that before. Now I do know it, but I forgot. Right. So when you train people, how often do you find yourself? So were you a cop before, or just military? You were a Marine. So when you're training people who were former Marines, how often do you find people that you're like, you should have known this, you should know this?
I found that shooting and a lot of the tactics that are used are very perishable of skill. Yeah. So
perishable in what way?
If you don't use it, you lose it.
But when you lose it, like, so when you say lose it, is it it's not like you completely forget it. It's that you. It's not like you have to relearn it. You have to remember it, I think is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's kind of like cleaning a weapon or taking apart a weapon you haven't done in a long time. You didn't completely forget it, but you watch somebody do it, and then you can jump right into it. Yeah. So it's kind of that situation, yeah.
Yeah, I've it's funny because breaking down the M4, I have bits and pieces around my apartment. I don't have an M4 anymore because I live in Manhattan, but I have bits and pieces, and I was going through and breaking down stuff the other day, and the first time I was breaking down the bolt, I was like, and then it just came back to me, and after that, now I can do it again fast. And that's the way it is. I have to remember this stuff. But I find like that's the biggest problem, I think. We were talking about this last night. Cops that have less than 1 year and cops that have over 20 years are really, I would say, over 16 years probably. they're almost as dumb, because once a cop gets to like 16 years, they have to guard against complacency, and they get so used to doing the same thing for 16 years that when something happens that they were trained for but they never used, that may be the last thing they think of doing. I'll give you an example of this. I was driving down looking for parking in Manhattan one day. It was raining sleet outside, rain. It was like freezing rain, and there'd already been like an inch of snow, so it was just like ice all over. And as I'm driving slowly to look for a parking lot or parking space, I look over, and there's this elderly woman laying on the sidewalk. Now, there's like 2-3 inches of water and ice, and so even though I saw a woman laying in that on the sidewalk, it took me a quarter of a second to hit the brakes, because that's just not normal. So I did. I go over. She had fallen. She had broken her hip. And I had to make a choice of moving her or stabilizing her. And so I chose to move her because she was literally, I don't know how long she'd been laying there. So my Suburban is rigged where it's got a bed in the back, but part of the bed would come out like a backboard. And we made it that way for training. And I had never used it, so I didn't use it. I just completely forgot that it was in there. And I ended up kind of lightly picking this woman up and putting her in the back of my Suburban ever so slightly and getting her to where I could get to an ambulance. And I sat back and thought about that, and I'm like, I made this truck in a way that it would have a backboard in it, but I never used it. And then when it came time, I completely forgot that it was in there. So do you find that you're a law enforcement officer? Come on over here. Like, go ahead.
I'm a former state trooper, and I also have a background in corrections. And just wanted to add, I think we were talking about complacency within some police agencies, and I think sometimes it's due to maybe time constraints or perhaps staffing issues. Right. Some agencies don't have the maybe budgetary issues. They don't have the time or the money to maybe invest in some of the most up-to-date tactics, techniques, and technology. And that's really the beauty of our company, is that we want to provide affordable, up-to-date training for as many agencies as we can. And we're willing to work with them and make that happen. Right. Including an up-to-date technology as well.
And with that, the budgets of these agencies. So I know for a long time nobody's paying for training. I've been advocating switching from giving SWAT teams all the money and all the training and all the gear to outfitting and training your average patrolman to work, which I thought was supposed to happen after Columbine, but we've proved in Vegas, we've proved in Orlando that that's not the case. It's just not working like that. Why is that? Why aren't they doing that? Is it a budgetary reason, or is it, as Pat McNamara said, that it's training theatrics where people have just they stop doing what's effective and they just do what's always been done, and that's the only amount of money that they put into it? You want to? Can you answer? You want to answer that?
Well, my opinion on that is, if you take what the SWAT team does, they have gone way far from their initial mission statement. They're all now about being super jocks and doing obstacle courses, and they have no shooting abilities. If you take a look, as you were saying, about the Orlando Pulse shooting, we've had over 20 years since the Colorado mass shooting there, and the mandate was that all police officers' skill sets were now supposed to be equivalent to SWAT. Well, that's not happened.
Never did. Never did happen.
And what's happened with that is we get away from the whole shooting skill set. If you look at the first two initial contact people that police officers that engaged the Pulse shooter, they missed at less than 15 feet away. The entry guys that made entry, they were 5 guys from 5 different departments, one a highly qualified SWAT guy from OPD, missed the shooter again with a scope rifle at 15 feet away. There was then the final breach, SWAT team standing by, OPD, with the Sheriff's Department made a breach. 15 guys standing out there get into a gunfight with the Pulse shooter. Out of 108 rounds from a SWAT team, 8 rounds hit the guy. and one, there was a 50 caliber Barrett in the Bearcat, and he missed. And my question is, how is that possible? And again, they're just not practicing how to do realistic shooting under realistic circumstances.
I know people would argue with me on this, but I think you can learn pressure shooting, which that's what I always call that. I don't know what they call it technically, but I always call that pressure shooting with something as cheap and affordable as airsoft. And you don't have to have, taking people to the range and doing mass amounts of static shooting, and it doesn't have to incorporate real bullets. You can do it cheap and effectively.
Yeah, I think the airsoft is an excellent solution to some of those budgetary, where some munitions would come into play that's expensive, and then certain conditions have to be, adhered to. You have less injuries with the airsoft. Targets don't shoot back, so to get that response, human response, and some of those factors that come into play under the real pressure, I think it's an excellent tool, and we're looking at every aspect of creating a more realistic training environment.
What is the acceptance of law enforcement? Because I tried to push this out for a while, and I found even though you press that it's inexpensive, for some reason they think that it is not effective, and they think that it's just impossible to train your patrolman. I mean, I was saying you could take them to an airsoft field, take instructors, and you could teach them this stuff at an airsoft field. It costs nothing.
That's correct. We had actually a company in Phoenix that did just that. They opened up a simulated, basically like a structure inside of a structure, and they would have stairs and everything like that for training. And they were an excellent company, and the trainers behind that company were some of the best people I've ever trained under. And it failed, surprisingly, because people weren't taking advantage of it. Now, what's ironic is it was right next door to the FBI headquarters in Phoenix, and it was in a location that was perfect for that. It was set up by the most qualified people to do that, and nobody took advantage of it.
And I also find when certain departments can't afford it, officers won't spend $100 to go train, but yet if you find out how much they spent on beer over the weekend and steak, they spent $200.
I think it comes into priorities, right? Some of these departments, they fortunately have never had to use deadly force. That's not a factor of their daily lives. Other departments are in shootings all the time. In Arizona, in California, there's places where it's constantly a violent scenario. And it's not because of their training that they're getting results. It's because of certain officers stepping forward and saying, okay, we're going to handle this way, we're going to handle this that way. Like Paul was saying with the Orlando situation, I think that those guys did the best job that they possibly could with what they had given to them at that point in time. But there was a lot of factors that weren't collaborated.
So I think the officers did especially the initial officers did what they were supposed to do, but then they were pulled out. The rest of the operation was ran by incompetent leadership that pulled them out and decided to call in a negotiator to talk to a guy who had just called the news department agency and said he was a supporter of ISIS. I mean, these types of decisions don't make any sense any longer. I don't know if they really made sense back then, but their excuse in Orlando was that it went from an active shooter to a barricaded situation. I honestly, once a person has a gun, you're not going to say that, when you pull up to a car and you do a traffic stop, you're not going to treat a person that's sitting there with a gun in his hand different than somebody who's pointing it at you pulling the trigger. You're probably going to shoot them. And so I don't understand this whole barricaded situation versus an active shooter in cases where they just killed like 25 people.
I think it comes down to our political and our media crucifixion of officers who use deadly force. Regardless of anything else, regardless of department policies, regardless of Department of Justice policies, no matter what they do, they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. And the problem is that if they get through it and they save lives and everything like that, then we Monday morning quarterback them afterwards. In the heat of the moment, they want to try to stay, I believe, they try to stay more reserved because they're thinking of how is this going to be reported tomorrow? How is this going to unfold? What's it going to be like for our agency? you know. And I think that training is something that has to constantly evolve. The way that we trained 15 years ago is not the way we train today. Same thing with, you know, SEAL teams. I'm sure the way that they trained 25 years ago is not how they train in any way today.
Yeah, in fact, I was talking to Ron Bellin yesterday, and he said before the war got ramped up in Afghanistan and Iraq, we trained on an even field. We didn't take into account the air and the assets in the air, and that you're actually fighting a battle in all these different dimensions versus just one dimension, which is like you're running in, you're shooting, you're doing CQB, you're moving. It turned out that there were not only up in the air, but different levels of the air. You had the C-130 Spectre gunship. You have the different drones that were flying around. You have the F-18s from the carrier. You have all these different. You have the helicopters coming in. You get all these different of the air assets that they had never thought about on a massive scale of using, and it changed everything when that changed from when I was in. And we worked with them, but we'd work with one or we'd work with the other. And then when they started incorporating all those things, it changed the way they did their fighting on this level.
I think as a society, too, we've changed. And I think that the value of life has diminished over the last 20 years. And I think that now people just don't have a value for life. And that's why you're seeing so many simple traffic stops that were nothing more than, you know, simple violations that the person would have been let go for, turning into shootings where cops are losing their lives.
Right.
And it's senseless. Yeah. And I think it's something that, like with us, we try to make departments aware that ambushes can happen anywhere. It doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter what kind of city it is or town or country. It can happen. It's going to happen. It's inevitable. People are crazy, you know, and law enforcement are the line between, you know, the general public and the criminals.
Right. I thought he was wanting to say something to me over there. Let's real quick, we'll wrap this up. Any of you guys have anything else to say about training in general, and then about your company? We'll start. Where do you want to start at?
Well, I believe with anything in training, if you look at the difference in people, we were talking about how back in the day we did things different, but we also took it more serious. Today's people, I don't find that to be the case. And if we go further back into the 1800s with the Western types of military guys or the law enforcement, they were not playing games. They knew it was a deadly serious business, and they took it deadly serious. And I think that's kind of the lack of what's going on today, is they're not taking it as serious as they should be, and we're just trying to bring out the reality that it is a very deadly serious business, because at the American Police Hall of Fame, we have 10,000 police officers on that wall since 1960. So they take it, that's an example of the reality of taking it serious.
Yeah, last year over 130 cops died, and I think it was like 30 veterans died. I mean, active duty military members. That should show everybody the staggering numbers of. We got protesters. Are they protesting the experts? I hope. No. Go ahead.
Just from the training perspective, we have to look at it and identify where we need to train to hopefully those skills that they learn if they're serious, and put it in their wheelhouse and put it in their mindset and be prepared for the inevitable.
So if you're training millennial cops, I think the first thing you should do is start with a severe beating. That's just my take on it. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but that seems. I think maybe that's what needs to happen. Go ahead.
No, I echo all these great comments that my brothers here are saying. Obviously, it's very, very serious. He said it's a perishable skill. I've heard that before. We need to sharpen people up. They got to be motivated. I've only seen the self-motivated operators really stepping up to the plate, not so much the masses, but we're trying to get that to people where there's constraints and obstacles and try to provide solutions to those problems.
No, I would agree with that. Yeah.
Anything else?
No, I really have nothing to add. Did you have anything, Brian?
Jess?
I think the nice thing about our company and the training that we're going to be doing is we have a cadre that's coming from a lot of different forces. Some of us from multiple different forces, and I think if you get training from a singular force, there's going to be gaps because they're trained a certain way, and I think our overlapping skill sets are going to be really great in this company. So,
and you're the one that has the tactical beard out of everybody, but I'm not going to lie to you, it looks a little Amish almost. There's more tactical beards I've seen here of people who probably never done anything tactical in their life. They put on combat boots. That's about as tactical as they've ever gotten. But okay, and last but not least.
Well, one thing else I'll add is something that we do that nobody else does is if a department can't truly afford training, if they just don't have budget for that or they don't want a budget for that, we can work with them. We can trade different things, weapons, equipment, things like that, to value of training, and then we can host it for other agencies to get those other agencies as a draw to them and to offset that cost. Right. Okay, I mean, bottom line is it has to cost money because we have to pay our way to get there and we have to pay for our time, but we're not looking to become the next billionaires in this industry. If it happens, we'll be really happy, but that's not our main priority.
Well, let's see what we can do here on The Experts if we can pump that up. And how do people find you?
StrategicOpsGroup.com is how you find us, and we are available nationwide.
StrategicOpsGroup.com. Okay. So you guys follow me on Facebook, and then I'll get your information and I'll put it out on my Facebook page, and then we'll go from there. And then I guess are you guys going to go eat?
Yes, we are.
Okay, I'm hungry too. All right, so let me wrap this up, guys, and then we'll figure out where we're going to go eat. So stand by for the Truth Zone coming up. All right, let's see here. We're going to go to the Truth Zone now, so stand by here. 1 second. Let me just work with this computer for a second because it freezes up. It's frozen right now, so stand by. It is frozen. There it goes. All right, we're going to close some things off here, so maybe it'll work faster. And let's go to the Truth Zone. Stand by, folks. Having a little technical difficulty here. There it goes. So, you know, folks, as I always say, if you want to do great things in life, you should surround yourself with great people. And that is exactly what I was doing today as I go off the camera here. You'll see I'm fixing this camera as I come over here. And that's been the goal. The goal is to, in this show, is to stand with people that, are not just sitting around, people that aren't just waiting in life for life to happen, people that not only have served in the military, but people who went on in life and actually continued to achieve and continued to serve. And as they were saying right there, that even police departments that don't have the money to do the things, they can still continue to actually work with those police departments because the focus is service. Of course, people want to make money, and they should want to make money in their lives when it comes to making a living and coming up with an idea. But what we've seen here tonight alone, we've had somebody who's involved, my friend Heidi, who's a veteran, who served in the Army, served in the legislation in Texas, who now puts her effort behind a wheelchair company for veterans. We had an incredible Gold Star wife whose husband was a Special Forces operator that was killed along with another individual, Mike Dustin and Riley Stevens, those two men, where they do the beef and beer fundraiser every year. These are people that have suffered or have sacrificed or have served and then are continuing to serve. We had my friend Mark, a former SEAL, who's also now a pastor in a church who is spreading the good word of the Lord Jesus Christ in his own incredible way. And then we have these fellas here coming here and talking about working with law enforcement and preppers and people who want to make sure that their tactics and their skills are up to par. They're not just going to work and coming home. They're not just self-serving. They're working for people and with people that want to empower themselves in this country. I mean, isn't that what this is all about? Isn't that what the founding fathers themselves fled to create and fled from tyranny to sustain? Was to give not just individually a better place to live, not just because this guy wanted to have a better life or that person wanted to have a better life. They did these things and they fled tyranny so that they could create their own country, so that they could create their own independence, so that they could take the bull by the horns and not wait for it to be given. They didn't want to be protected. They wanted to protect themselves. They didn't expect the government to take care of them. They went out and they took care of business themselves. They rescued themselves. They empowered themselves. And that is what it's all about. Coming here to SHOT Show this week has helped me have more faith in the citizenry. I see now that there are more citizens out there that are like-minded like us, like the CQRF, people that are willing to step up and stand up. And we're going to talk to more of them this week. I'm Jonathan Gillum. My good old buddy Rico, my 18-year-old Jack Russell's back at my apartment in New York City. We'll see him soon. This is The Experts. And remember, wherever you see this face, wherever you hear this voice, the truth has arrived. I'll see you tomorrow from the SHOT Show.
Make sure you share this show and go get my book, Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival. I'm tired. I'm gonna go eat some steak and go to sleep. Peace!
Make sure you share the show, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow on The Experts. I'm Jonathan Gillum. Peace.